Hey everyone, welcome to the 221st episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a rockin' show for you today. I really enjoyed my 80s disc jockey voice there. We're going to be talking about the new Thread protocol. We've got a Google Assistant for the Office with real estate giant JLL. We've got Dish introducing a smart home service. We've got some bad news on the Samsung Smart TV front. And we've got some security updates that we should talk about for IoT. Plus, tons of news. We've got medical device testing from an iPhone. We have a new HomeKit outlet. And we have some speculation about the Galaxy Home and an update on those IKEA smart blinds. If we have time, we're going to get to a lawsuit over kids' voices on the Amazon Echo. And you'll hear from our sponsor, Dell Technologies, talking about Edge X Foundry. Plus, our guest this week is Schneider Electric CIO Elizabeth Hackinson, and she is going to talk about how the energy management firm handles the IT-OT divide, plus how it thinks about cybersecurity. All of this awaits you in just a few moments. But first, a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Nordic Semiconductor. Are you planning to build a product using cellular IoT technology? Check out the NRF9160. It's the most advanced multi-mode cellular IoT device in the market today. It supports the two cellular standards for IoT applications, LTE-M and narrowband IoT in a single device. It also supports up to 15 LTE bands, making it truly globally compatible. It also has on-chip GPS, which makes it ideal for any asset tracking and monitoring application. Plus, application power and security come in the form of ARM's latest Cortex M33 CPU and ARM's Trust Zone security, with 1 megabyte of flash and 256 kilobytes of RAM. There are integrated RF front ends and adaptive power managed on the SiP. The NRF9160 is your first consideration when designing cellular IoT products. So find out more at www.nordicsemi.com/9160. Alrighty, Kevin. First off, I have to tell everybody I am now in my home studio on Bainbridge Island. Yay!
Yay!
All the craziness is now behind me. Some of the craziness is still ahead of me, such as setting up my smart home network. So you can expect to hear more about all of that, probably in the next week or two.
People have asked about that previously before you even moved. You know, what have you removed? What are you going to set up? I think you just mentioned last week what you missed the most.
I did. And yes, we're going to get to all of that, but it is not the first thing. I think when I took out all the stuff, I realized how much moving a smart home adds on to the process of moving. And having now unpacked everything and organized most of it, I'm sitting here looking at my boxes of gear and I'm like, oh, it'd be so nice if this worked. But I don't want to set it up right now because I'm tired. Anyway. Let's start the show with updates on Thread. This is great news. It's big news. Thread is a wireless radio protocol. The things that you would need to know about Thread is it's a mesh network. It is IPv6 compatible, which means you can go straight out to the internet, and it is low power. So this is a network that competes with things like Zigbee, Bluetooth, Z-Wave. We've talked about it before. What's exciting about it is it's actually a whole new protocol just for the smart home. The folks at Nest, Samsung, big beep fans, and a couple other companies designed it several years ago. And we've been waiting for it to really take off, but it really hasn't. And with Thread 1.2, this is their latest version of Thread. They've done 3 things that are really interesting and worth talking about. So first off, they've been working on this for 3 years. It's a long process.
I think the first Thread device or Thread-capable device I saw was the original Google OnHub router.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you still have that.
That I do not. I've replaced with a regular Google Wi-Fi.
Oh, just kidding. I was so excited for you. I was like,
Nope.
Oh. But no.
Nope.
No. Okay, so let's talk about the three main things that Thread 1.2 is going to do. It is lowering the power requirements, so it extends the battery life of IoT devices. Yay! It puts it in the same world as Bluetooth Low Energy. The other thing it's done is they've created extensions for Bluetooth Low Energy, which means that this protocol will work over Bluetooth radios. And this means that if you have a Bluetooth-based device as a node on your network, you can actually have it talk to your Thread network, provided there's another node on your Thread network that speaks Bluetooth. That sounds really complicated, but it's actually not a crazy ask.
No, it's kind of like if you have a fax machine, you need to have somebody else that has a fax machine too, or you can't use it. That makes sense to me. The real question is it backwards compatible with like existing Bluetooth devices on the market today?
It is.
Ooh, yay. No new hardware required.
You're probably going to have a firmware update unless you've got like a brand new device that's got a chip that already has that firmware in it, but it will work with your old Bluetooth stuff, Bluetooth Low Energy. This is cool. What it can do is if you have maybe a Bluetooth sensor, for example, and you want it to work with your Thread-based air conditioning or your Thread-based lights, it will actually become part of that network. So that sensor could easily communicate with those lights. Yay!
Awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And then the other thing that they've done is they call it commercial extensions. And there's two things they did here. The first part is they've made it possible to have larger networks of Thread devices. So Thread taps out on an individual network at around 350 devices is kind of the general rule of thumb, which is a lot.
Yeah, that's plenty for a home, but not for, say, an enterprise.
Right. Or if it's a really big home. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I have like my
What kind of house did you get there on Bainbridge?
Well, no. My current house has no light bulbs. There are no light bulbs in this house. It's really weird. Some rooms don't have any overhead lighting. Crazy.
Almost none of mine do.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. But in my old house, I had 80 light bulbs. So I could see if you had 80 light bulbs plus temperature sensors and all of these other things, and you had a larger house than I had, you could probably get to 350. The point is, now you're not limited by that. What happens is they've created like a virtual overlay. So a physical network of Thread devices can talk to the router and you can join them up with another physical one. So when you're talking to like the IP addresses, you can actually address all 700 or all however many networks you have as one unified thing. So many networks now look like one network. That's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then
There's more?
This is the money. They've added enterprise-grade lifecycle device management. So in the home, when I connect a Thread device, I do a QR code or I do something like that, right? In the enterprise, that is stupid because you don't want everybody to be able to add devices or take devices away, right? So they've tied in with Cisco and some other open protocols to give you admin rights for commissioning and decommissioning devices.
That's probably a lot quicker, too. I wouldn't want to be going around an enterprise and scanning a QR code for every single device that I was trying to deploy.
Oh my gosh, yes. Can you imagine?
It'd be a good gig if they paid you well because it's pretty easy, but it's not efficient.
It is not a good use of someone's
time.
Hey,
where's the QR code guy?
So that's what Thread's done. And to provide some context here, to me, this looks like a continual kind of, I don't want to say retrenchment. The smart home isn't going where we all kind of hoped it would go. It is becoming much more locked into these vendor ecosystems built around voice assistants, I would say. And the wireless protocols that we were like, oh, it'll all be open and cool and everything will talk to each other. That's not happening. So it makes sense that Thread would say, if we want to remain relevant, we've got to go to the enterprise. And Bluetooth has actually done the kind of, they're still fine in the home and everywhere else, but they've also made a big effort to branch out into the enterprise. So that's, I guess, the context here.
Yeah, I've always looked at it from the smart home perspective because I've been out of enterprise for 15 years. I've been waiting to see some Thread implementation at the device level that would make me go, wow, this is awesome, gotta have it. And I haven't seen that yet. But again, as you said, everything is going Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and siloed digital assistant platform. So in the home, that is. So hopefully we hear about soon some big implementations, some wide scale ones.
And the Thread group has like Osram and Siemens. They joined the board a while back. So, this isn't crazy. It makes a lot of sense. Plus, unlike Zigbee, it doesn't go out to, like, Zigbee is very popular in the enterprise. It's not IPv6 compatible, so you still have to make that next hop, whereas Thread is. So
right.
It'll tie your like lighting system directly into your IP system.
We're going to get all the haters now because they always say you're always dissing Zigbee, and we're not doing that. It's just a technical limitation that some people can't work with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not dissing Zigbee. I have no feelings whatsoever, positive or negative, about Zigbee. So yay, Thread. The one other piece of news that they released this week, which on the smart home side is interesting, is Lutron has joined the Thread board. What? So yeah, Lutron joined the Thread group's board of directors. And the first thing I thought was, holy mackerel, what's going to happen to Lutron's proprietary protocols, which are proprietary, but they're really good. So they have Clear Connect. And then for their fancier, larger professional installations, they have Radio Raw 2. And I don't know. I reached out to Lutron. They have not gotten back to me. But I will also, as a hint, say that recently they released the Aurora product, which works with Zigbee, which is the same radio that Thread runs over. They released this product that holds your light switch open for your Hue light bulbs, and it works with the Hue light bulb system using Zigbee. So I saw that and I was like, hey, that's not using Lutron's radio. That's kind of interesting. And now with Lutron joining the Thread group, I'm like, do I think they totally ditch their proprietary protocol? Probably not, but I like the fact that they might be working more broadly with a more open standard.
Yeah, I agree. And that Aurora, that's the, that doesn't stick on. It kind of clamps onto an existing light switch. It's a round knob, right?
Yeah, it's a round dimmer switch that you screw it. It's like tension mounted. You do screw it onto your light switch, but there's no wiring. It's $40. I actually have it in front of me, and the second I get my Hue bulbs in, which is going to happen this weekend, I'm going to test this out so we can all see if it's good or not. So
cool.
Yay! By the way, that only works with the toggle switches that stick out from the wall. I don't know how it does not work with the paddles or rocker style switches.
Yeah, traditional light switch.
Wah, wah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. You won't see the old ugly light switch anymore.
That's true. You see a beautiful dimmer switch and people will be impressed. Ooh. Okay. Let's talk about more enterprise news. Man, this is exciting. JLL, which is a real estate behemoth. Is that fair? That's fair.
I think that's fair.
That's fair. They have teamed up with Google Assistant to create a smart assistant for offices. So this is like asking, hey, assistant, is the conference room open? And getting an answer. This is big. Amazon is working with other companies to try to bring this into businesses. So is Microsoft with Cortana. That's actually where I think we're most likely to see Cortana succeed. And lo and behold, Google's just like swept on in and made this work.
Yeah, and I remember when I used to work at Google, I'd go into the New York City office once a week, and we didn't use Google Assistant for conference rooms and such, but it was all an automated system using the Google Calendar and whatnot. And you could search and say, find me a room from this time to this time that's open. I'd like it to have a video, a whiteboard or video calling or whatever. And the system would just do it. I mean, basically they had everything there, but the voice capability, right? So I'm not surprised that Google is the one to do this because it probably didn't take much effort to extend what they already have.
Yes. And the JLL, they manage offices, like we said. Their assistant is called Jill.
Of course it is.
Of course
Just put a vowel in there.
Which is actually bad because I have been given to understand that you really want a double or triple syllable word as your voice assistant because it's harder or it's easier for the AI to differentiate.
Oh.
Which I was
so you'd have to say, hey, Jill.
Yeah. Hey, Jill.
Yeah.
Book me a room.
No.
Okay.
Don't butcher my favorite song.
Kevin can handle a lot of my singing, you guys, but he can't handle me singing the Beatles. All right. So
it's not that you're a bad singer. It's what you're doing to the words.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is on your smartphone, though. This is not actually on a physical device in the room just yet. This is So, you
Just, it's
download the app
Yeah.
but it does bring in stuff that you would normally need to do, like, hey, are these desks available, or book me a desk if you're in a hot desking kind of place.
Right. I like the fact that even though it runs on Google Cloud on the back end, and it's obviously using Google's voice technology, it doesn't just integrate with G Suite calendars. It also will integrate with Microsoft 365, which is obviously the behemoth of Office productivity suites.
It is. It's the Kraken of Office productivity suites. Yes. And so they're trying this out with customers. One of the first customers is going to be Procter & Gamble. So my hope is I've actually reached out to the JLL team and the Google team to get Procter & Gamble to come talk to us about what they're learning and how people are actually using this, if people are actually using this. So hopefully that will happen. All right. Moving right along, Dish, the satellite company, satellite TV is what we know them as. They have launched a smart home services unit, and they're going to basically come in and help set up your smart home. They will be working with Nest, Ring, Linksys, Roku, Yale, and a couple audio companies. And Comcast has been doing this for a while. AT&T and Verizon both started these business units, but they actually backed out of them. So Comcast is the only one I know of that's doing it right now in the ISP space. So
I don't see this as a big market, and I think that's why the others who are already in it have scaled back. So I'm a little surprised that Dish is doing this. There are definitely people who would just like you to, hey, set it all up for me. I get that. But I don't think it's a large percentage of people, because the products these days are pretty easy to set up.
yes, and
I mean, if they're going to do what the Amazon guy did for you, and like, what kind of routines do you want? What kind of,
yeah.
if it's just device setup, but if they're going to
No,
talk
they're gonna set them up for like routines and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So, and I will say, you may not be aware of this, Kevin, but Dish has said, they have not done it yet, but they have said they're going to launch an NB-IoT network. So
yeah, I could see that. And it would tie into this, yes. They're vying for the spectrum from T-Mobile, Sprint, if those two get together and have to divest some things. And have even looked at the Boost Mobile as an investment as well. So, yeah, okay, but
I don't know if this is going to be huge, but you also, I mean, think about like Alarm.com has done a pretty good job building a smart home capability as well. Now they offer the devices and services.
That's right.
So does Vivint. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there is a market for this sort of thing. I don't know how big it is. I think there are lots of little independent companies. There was one in Austin called Smart House, Houz. And, they set up smart home systems for people. And I actually think there's a tiny market there, but I don't know if it's scalable. I think it feels more like a consulting thing.
I agree. That's exactly right.
But we'll see. Let's talk security, because OMG, the world went nuts this week because Samsung told them.
Yes. Samsung tweeted something that we'll read word for word in a second, but then deleted the tweet, which is really interesting in and of itself. So I don't have any Samsung smart TVs. I don't know if you do.
I do not.
I'm sure some of our listeners do. So this is the tweet that Samsung Support USA sent out. Scanning your computer for malware viruses is important to keep it running smoothly. I agree with that. This is also true for your QLED TV if it's connected to Wi-Fi. Prevent malicious software attacks on your TV by scanning for viruses on your TV every few weeks. Here's how. That's not smart, Samsung.
So I think a lot of people, if they saw that tweet, were like,
Why did they send it?
I could have viruses on my TV.
Sure you could.
So, and yes, the smart TVs are a notorious place for viruses because they're not updated very often. Some people might be like, yay, Samsung, pointing out that there's antivirus software. But I don't think we want to live in a future where our connected devices are so badly engineered that we have to run virus scans on them.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, the Samsung Smart TVs run Samsung's Tizen platform. So it's not a platform we talk about often. It's probably not a platform that really is attacked all that much either because...
Oh my gosh, no, it was attacked.
What?
Remember they had like 40 security vulnerabilities in Tizen because Samsung originally wanted everything to run on Tizen.
That's right. I do recall that. That was about 2 years ago.
Man,
I
time
forgot
flies when you're
about
having
that.
fun.
Well, I haven't
But
heard
yeah.
about it since then. That's kind of why I was like, But you're right. It wasn't engineered with security in mind, let's say.
Yeah. So when we're doing our show notes, I just put this on the show notes as this is a bad future. This is a future I don't want. But
No.
for me, I don't connect my TV to the internet. I instead use a Roku and connect it to the internet via Roku. I also, another option here that would help is, I know I've been skeptical of them, but maybe this sort of thing will change my mind, is having a connected service that monitors your network and says, hey, did you know your TV is sending gobs of data, not just when it's on, but to weird places in, Malaysia?
I'm so glad you said that because I'm hoping we're going to review a product that will help with that. I don't want to get into it right now, but I'm looking for something along those lines, and we stumbled upon one earlier this morning.
You should just tell people what it is in case they want to get excited and look it up themselves.
Nah, I don't want to do that.
Oh, you're such a tease. I'll tell people
No,
because I'm
go
not
ahead,
a
you
jerk.
tell them.
It's called the Firewalla.
Yes, and I think it was ex-Cisco people that put it together. And it's, to be honest, it's like a consumer derivative of something like that you could do on your own with a Raspberry Pi if you wanted to. So, but it's made plug and play, and you don't have to worry about setting it up, configuring, coding, etc. But it does many things, and one of the things is, yes, it's monitoring where your traffic is going from all your devices.
So something like that could help. And then you could be like, holy cow, it's time to run virus scan and get rid of those on my TV. But
yeah.
Ideally, if you're going to make something smart, you need to make it secure as well.
I didn't know you were a set-top box person.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a cord cutter forever, and the Roku
no,
is...
same here. I use 2 Android TVs, NVIDIA Shields, or I watch directly on my Chromebook.
I do have both a Fire TV stick and a Chromecast, but we actually don't use them that often. We're pretty simple. We only have one TV in our whole house.
I'm not going to tell you how many screens are here.
Well, I guess we could watch on our Google Display or our Amazon Echo Show, but we don't. Okay, let's talk about other security. Kevin.
TPMs, Trusted Platform Modules. And I said this at least, 5 times in the last 2 years. I want Trusted Platform Modules in my IoT devices. Why do I want that? Because it's the same reason I have them and want them in my Chromebooks that I use.
Wait. First, you should tell people what it is.
A Trusted Platform Module?
Yes.
So basically it is a specific chip, although I think it can be implemented in kind of like with a coprocessor. It can probably be embedded in an SoC, I'm thinking, yes?
Yes.
So either way, it's an authentication method. And what it does is it basically has cryptographically stored keys that protect your device from having, say, the operating system flashed without your knowledge or tweaked without your knowledge, where maybe a virus could actually say, let's install this routine and get all the information from their computer behind the scenes and so on. It does several things at a very low level, but at a high level, it protects your device from being changed without your knowledge. It's a verification system that says, yes, this is working as intended. It has not been hacked, etc.
Got it. So I'm curious because in the world of computing, ARM, for example, has a trusted compute module. They have the trust zone, and they have that actually on microcontrollers, which is one of the challenges of these types of devices is they don't work on low resource devices. So things with microcontrollers without a lot of memory. And so ARM has had something and they brought it down to the MCU level, and NXP and a couple other microcontroller makers are now implementing it, so you can buy these.
I wonder if there's a difference, though, with the trusted zone, because I think like to the iPhone where they have the trusted enclave for your fingerprint. My understanding, and I could very well be wrong, is that those zones and enclaves, etc., are for storing protected data, not for verifying the system has or hasn't been compromised.
So Trust Zone, it will run a check to make sure it's basically a sandbox to run secure program. So you can run an app in that area. So you can load the app in that area and nothing can modify it.
Okay, so there's a slight difference then because a TPM it's not a sandbox. It doesn't run apps. It verifies like the BIOS of
Okay, so then that sounds like I just wrote about a company called Nanolock, and they don't do it on the processor side. They do it on the flash memory side, which is when something gets an over-the-air update, for example, it checks it and says, hey, is this actually from the legit
right? Like, does it have signed keys, etc.?
Does it have signed keys? And is it trying to change something that shouldn't be changed?
Right.
So that happens, but that's on the memory side, not on the processor side. So I think I agree with you. I think we have to be a lot smarter to figure out the proper mechanism to do this. But I'm with you. We do need this sort of functionality on our IoT devices.
Yeah, to me, it's not going to protect my IoT data. It's not going to stop something from sending data somewhere else.
Right.
What it's going to do is for over-the-air updates, for example.
Is malicious. It prevents someone from trying to take over your device and get into it. And we do need that. We're all in agreement. We're unsure the right mechanism to do it. I imagine everybody's going to have a slightly different take, but feel free to talk to us if you're smarter on this than we are, because we're working our way through it slowly but surely.
Yes.
All right, let's do some quick news bits. Kevin, iPhone camera.
iPhone camera. So a paper by the Royal Society of Chemistry is coming soon. Can't read it yet, but they demonstrated the use of an iPhone and thin film to make I'm going to say this wrong, spectrometer?
Spectrometer?
Yeah, well, spectrometry sensor.
Okay.
Yes. So basically what they're doing is they're using the flash of an iPhone and this thin film to hold some type of bodily fluid or DNA, etc. And what they can do is literally perform spectrometry analysis on the iPhone with it. So I think that was kind of cool.
It is cool. Another update is on IKEA blinds. We had talked to Bjorn Block, who's head of the IKEA smart home effort, and he had told us that these smart blinds that we're all so excited about because they're going to be cheaper and from IKEA, those are delayed again. They were going to be out in August, and they're still going to be out in August in Europe, but in the US, we're going to see an October 1st launch date. So,
boo.
Boo. And yet still cool. All right.
And we still don't have a price on those, do we?
We don't. I think they're going to be about $150, maybe a little less.
Okay.
Okay. And it depends on the size.
Yes.
All right. What about this HomeKit outlet, Kevin?
The HomeKit outlet. For you HomeKit folks, you can now buy the dual smart outlet from Satechi, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. It's just like any other smart home outlet. It's a dual plug, so you turn one of your plugs into two outlets, and then you can control devices that are connected to it through the Apple Home application because it's got HomeKit support. Obviously, it's Wi-Fi because Apple's HomeKit really only works with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, if I recall.
Yep, that is true.
Trying to see a price. It is $59.99, which sounds like a lot for a smart outlet, but again, you're kind of getting two outlets in that one device.
Got it. All right. And hey, Bixby, is it back, Kevin?
Ha! Was it ever here? Specifically, the Galaxy Home, the fondue pot speaker with Bixby built in.
Oh, yeah.
The Galaxy Home. Oh, yeah. They announced that, 18 months ago, and it's still not for sale? Well, it still isn't, but rumor has it that Samsung will be debuting its next phone, the Galaxy Note 10, on August 7th in New York. Invites have not gone out, but the insider scoop is that August 7th is the date. I am going to predict we finally see the Galaxy Home with a ship date, with a price, and probably a little baby Galaxy Home because there have been FCC filings for something smaller, a smaller fondue pot, kind of like the Echo Mini or the...
like a warm queso chafing dish?
There you go. Exactly. One chip at a time. Thank you, Bixby.
Awesome. All right. I don't know if we're going to try that or not. I have no desire.
I don't know if anybody will at this point.
All right. And then final little bit of news. Amazon is being sued for privacy violations for kids. This is actually something we've talked about in the past, which is the Children's Online Protection and Something Act.
The Privacy Act.
Privacy. Thank you. Privacy and Protection, or Protection and Privacy Act, prevents companies from gathering data from children under the age of 13. And a long time ago, when I had my Echo device, I was like, hey, Amazon is recording my daughter's voice. She is not yet 13. That feels like that might violate that. The FTC actually did a notice like maybe a year and a half ago that said, we're not super worried as long as you're not selling that. But 2 lawsuits were filed last week in Seattle that said, hey, you know what? This is a problem. And it's a problem for a couple reasons. They basically said that Amazon is recording all of these voice prints of children, and that's not cool. It's without their consent or the consent of their parents. They are saying that Amazon's privacy policies, and this is the important thing to me, that say if you use the Amazon Echo device and talk to Madam A, you're basically consenting to this privacy policy that they have. If you don't accept it, you may not use her. But the lawsuit is saying, in the you here, because this is a device that's in a household, are all people in the household consenting to this? No, probably not. Which is kind of interesting because I often consent to privacy policies on behalf of my entire home. And, I can see my husband being like, no, I'm not into that. So.
And what about guests? What about people who just come over to your house?
Yeah.
I never thought of that, to be honest, from a consent standpoint.
Yeah. If you have like my mom, she is very privacy focused. She does not like my house. She actually will walk through my house, like turning off the microphones, even though she knows, she's like, without a physical kill switch, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. Anyway, there's a lot of meat here in this lawsuit, and, it's worth looking at the filings. I'll put them in there. And that's this week in IoT news. I think it's time to go to our voicemail. What do you think, Kevin?
I do. And even though it's the middle of June, we actually have to go back a month and say we got a winner for May.
Yes, we forgot the May winner, partially because we had pre-recorded an episode, and then
you had to move and all. Yes.
Then also I moved. It was crazy, but it doesn't matter. We still have a prize for our May winner. Our winner gets a Schlage lock. Yay! And the May winner was Lynn, and we actually answered his question last week. So Lynn, not only did you get your question answered, you also won. Congratulations.
It was a good question too. It was what's our most underrated smart home function, feature, etc.
It was. And this month's IoT Podcast Hotline is sponsored by Affero. With the 5th largest IoT patent portfolio in the world, Affero provides a proven IoT platform that doesn't risk your brand. Affero customers have experienced as much as an 80% reduction in time to market and 10x higher activation rates. You can learn more at affero.io. And I'm going to encourage everyone to call in, and you'll be entered to win the Wyze Sensor Kit and a camera. So please call us at 512-623-7424 and ask us your question. And now it's time for this week's question, which is from Jeff. Let's hear it.
Hi, Stacy and Kevin. This is Jeff. I had a quick question. We have so many digital assistants in the home, from Google to Madam A. And I was wondering if there's anything embedded that they have, maybe like a ceiling mount, or not really that so much, but maybe lighting that has it incorporated within, or a smoke detector. This way there's less clutter on the counter, and when you walk through the home, it's freely spoken and sounds better, and they can hear you better. If not, do they sell sensors that Amazon or Google make that you can use with your existing so they can hear you better as well? I look forward to the answer, and keep up the great work. And of course, you can use this on the show. Thank you.
So we get this question like once every 6 months, and I love this question because it kind of confirms what I've been saying. We have too many smart speakers in the house cluttering up every single room. But you can do something about that, Jeff. As you said, you asked if there's ceiling mounts or any lights. There are several ceiling mounts available for either Echo Dots or Home Minis, which are similarly sized, but you do have to buy the proper
Echo
mount
Dots.
for it. I'm not going to recommend one because there's so many to choose from on Amazon. They all run around $15 to $18 each. It doesn't look too difficult to install. In fact, some people that we've recommended these to have called us back and said, hey, it did work. It was pretty easy and so on. So That'll get your speaker out of the way, up in the ceiling. Or if you don't feel like installing anything, for about the same price, there's a couple vendors on Amazon that also make plug-in modules that you literally, it's a mount system, and you mount your small smart speaker to the wall, essentially. You plug this into an outlet, and your speaker sits on top of it and is plugged into that outlet. So that way you don't have cords all over either, and it's out of the way. It's on the wall, and you're good. As far as other devices with smart speakers that can remove the traditional ones, I know, Stacey, you tried the First Alerts, the smoke detectors that had, I think, Madam A built in, but I'm pretty sure they were working on it back at CES. They said Google Assistant as well.
Yes. So the First Alert smoke detectors, they're expensive. They're like $200. They're a smoke detector. It sounds really good. It actually has an amazing speaker in there. And they mount to your ceiling exactly where your old smoke detector mounts. Here's my issue. If you want just to talk to her and you don't want it to play music, this is a good option. But a lot of the devices, like I've had Madam A inside light switches. You can buy an Ecobee thermostat with Madam A inside. It's weird. The placement is not ideal for a lot of these things for like listening to music. My thermostats are kind of in the back of a hallway. Even your smoke detectors are in a weird spot on the room sometimes. They're not in the middle of the ceiling, for example.
Not going to be full fidelity sound there.
If you're just wanting to talk to it, then yes, it's totally fine. But sometimes it's a little weird having your light switch play music. Your mileage may vary. You may not care about sound quality. You may be like, this is totally sufficient, and I get rid of stuff on my shelves and places. It's all out there for you. The one caveat I will say with a lot of these devices, you want to check to see which Amazon services are supported over them. For example, the First Alert does not support the newest Amazon Guard, for example.
That's kind of common with third-party implementations of these voice services. Typically the newest features come to the name brand, the ones made by Amazon or by Google, etc. Eventually, a lot of them filter down to third parties, but not always.
Yeah, like some of the smart light switches, and I think my Ecobee thermostat doesn't play music.
Right. Same with my Vector robot, which does have Madam A built in. Bet you can get one pretty cheap since the company has gone away. But, I mean, he's perfect for turning lights on or asking what the weather is and such, but I wouldn't play music on him, and he can't actually.
Right. Which is a shame because, DJ Roomba could be a real reality.
He does dance if you ask him.
Of course.
But
all right. I feel like we're moving off now that we're talking about what robots can do. So let's call it quits for this segment of the show. I'd love for you to stay tuned because I have Elizabeth Hackinson, who is the CIO of Schneider Electric. This is a 25 billion euro company. She's talking about their steps to do a digital transformation, the IT-OT divide, and cybersecurity. So there's a lot of meat to this. Please stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, here's a message from our sponsor. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Dell Technologies, and I have Ken Mills, the General Manager of Dell Technologies Industry, IoT, IoT Safety and Security, and Computer Vision. Ken, that is a lot of titles. So what is your business exactly?
Yeah, thanks, Stacey. Thanks for having me. We're excited to be here and sponsor this segment. Most people on the podcast probably know that video surveillance cameras have been the original IoT sensor and have been used for gathering video data at the edge for over 20 years. Those video sensors have become much more intelligent, much more capable, and are driving a lot more storage than they ever have before. This is requiring our customers to look at safety and security in a very new paradigm where they're really having to treat safety and security as an enterprise application. And they're also wanting to integrate this video with IoT data. They're wanting to apply analytics to make better decisions, real-time decisions. And this is happening across all of our customer segments. All of our customers are dealing with this challenge. And it's a real challenge that we have right now.
A few months ago, Dell Technologies launched the Dell Technologies IoT solution for surveillance. And you've told me that this solution can handle some enormous use cases. I believe you've got one customer with over 250,000 cameras and another who is dealing with 120 petabytes of video storage. That is an enormous amount of cameras and data. How has this solution changed from the time that you've launched it?
We started with those complex customers at that size range because those customers have the most amount of challenges in deploying that density of cameras and that quantity of storage. But we didn't want to stop there. We wanted to bring that same value proposition down to much smaller systems where customers still have complexities in deployment, ongoing management, and lifecycle management of all of that video data for not just 10 days, not just 30 days, in a lot of cases, years. So we wanted to make it easier, more scalable, and more cost-effective for our customers to deploy surveillance technology and storage at scale.
Excellent. All right. And who would benefit most from this type of solution?
One of the great things about surveillance and safety and security data is that it affects everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a hospital, a school, a stadium, a city, an enterprise customer. Surveillance is one of those technologies that is a horizontal use case. So we built a solution to really scale and address problems regardless of the customer type, but really where customers need a very supportable, scalable, secure solution to deploy and manage surveillance at scale.
Great. So Ken, where can folks go to learn more about Dell Technologies and the IoT solution for surveillance?
Thanks, Stacey. Appreciate the time. Customers and partners can go find more information on this solution and other IoT solutions we're bringing to market at delltechnologies.com/IoT.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Elizabeth Hackinson, who is the CIO of Schneider Electric. Hello, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Stacey?
I am fantastic. So let's start with Schneider Electric. Tell us a little bit about the company because it is huge. It does a lot of different things. How should we think of it?
So Schneider Electric is a global company, and we're leading the digital transformation of energy management and automation across multiple markets, which include industry, power, buildings, data center, and other infrastructure projects. We have over 130,000 employees in more than 100 countries. We had 25.7 billion euro in revenue in 2018. And we spend about 5% of our revenue devoted to R&D.
All right. And what I want my audience to understand is Schneider Electric is kind of the original OT type of company. This is a company that makes circuit breakers. You make building management software. These are people who are dealing with the guts of buildings, and they don't necessarily take kindly to IT. So that's why you're on this week. And I wanted to ask you first, how do you view your role as a CIO when we're in the midst of this big digital transformation?
Well, being a CIO for quite some time now, I would say it's probably one of the most exciting times to be a CIO, given the digital transformation, because it doesn't matter what industry that you are in, who your customers are, what country you're located in. We're all experiencing the benefits of digital technologies. And so as CIO, it's really important to get close to your customers and your business peers and determine how best do we go on this digital journey together. And depending upon the company you're with, some CIOs are actually the one leading the company's digital efforts. And then there's like Schneider, we're so big and we have so much going on with digital that 2 years ago, the company decided to create a new role called the Chief Digital Officer. And reporting into that role are folks like myself, the CIO, the Chief Data Officer, CTOs, other levels at the C-level who are also focusing on customer experience, our services experience. So we're really a collection of individuals who have deep experience in everything from marketing, service, R&D, IT, security, all coming together under the Chief Digital Officer umbrella to help lead the digital transformation of the company. Again, other companies, it could be, very different from that and asking either a CTO or a CIO to lead the digital transformation. But here we have a much broader scope of individuals working together to drive the transformation.
That's wise. With 130,000 people, I can't imagine trying to change the course of that ship. So makes a lot of sense. So in the role of CIO, I'm really curious because we talk a lot about in these digital transformations how there's an IT OT divide, and that's the IT staff and the operational staff. You talked about it as a convergence, which I think is totally accurate. Can you talk a little bit about how that is working inside Schneider Electric as you guys undergo this digital transformation?
As you mentioned, we believe IT and OT is about a convergence and not a divide, although there may be some who continue to think that way. But when cybersecurity started to become more and more of a concern for companies, we realized that as we began to take these traditional OT devices that didn't connect to the internet and now do connect to the internet, that's what the acronym of IoT is, we realized that there was no longer this separation between OT and IT. They now were going to begin to be on the same network, communicate together for different types of systems that might be in factories, et cetera. So it was linking really the enterprise systems to the systems that were contained in the past, let's say in factories, for example. So with this convergence, we found that a lot more started to come into the IT realm or even to the CIO because many of our colleagues, let's say, who are in plants and factories, didn't necessarily pay a lot of attention to systems in the past. Most of what they used were self-contained, and now all of a sudden they have their systems being exposed to the internet, which means that they are now vulnerable potentially for a cyber attack. So I would say that the IT organization and the CIO has been managing the cybersecurity for quite some time now, as our enterprise systems have been on the internet for, at least a decade, if not more. We were very knowledgeable and aware of the different security practices that you would need, not only from access control, but also different uses of software to protect from cyber attacks. So this convergence for us at Schneider was probably easier than maybe others, just due to our extensive IT footprint, not only in our offices, but also within our plants and our factories.
And I'm curious because when I go and visit plants and factories and I talk to them about security, I feel like a lot of these operationally focused individuals, they have wonderful training and they have things like, OSHA rules or ISO rules that they have to follow for security and safety. And I look at that and I think, hey, a lot of times that sort of training and probably documentation would be actually really excellent in the IT world. And we don't have things like that go out maybe to all of the employees, for example. And I'm curious, maybe what are the best practices each side could take from each other to improve security?
I would say that it's a partnership. And I'll, just speak about our company because that's the one I'm closest to on this subject. And the gentleman who leads our global supply chain, his team, and I would say the chief digital officer's teams, we are very tightly coupled, as well as our chief information security officers. So we look at the groups working hand in hand and leveraging best practices. So while we certainly rely upon our plants and our distribution centers to implement the NIST standards and frameworks that we're leveraging for cybersecurity, obviously we're always willing to learn from them. And in fact, the way we look at protecting our factories and our distribution centers is with an individual from the global supply chain who is coming from more of the safety background in the plant. And we're merging, to your point, the best of both operational best practices as well as IT and cyber best practices. And I do believe that the pace at which we are moving and implementing our plans is phenomenal. I know I talk to a lot of other CIOs who I think are still trying to figure out maybe the division between the organizations and what we decided to do. And I think it was just part of the way some of the leaders are. We took down all the hierarchies and the different lines between us and realized that we were better working together than as a divide and being open to any of the best practices that we could bring to the table.
Excellent. And another challenge on this side is that IT typically has, you think of things like Agile, which is a very big development process that everyone's espousing. And you think of things like, hey, if you're a plant manager, you don't want to change everything. You just want something that works and you want to stick with it. And hopefully it doesn't break, right? So it feels like these are very different worldviews that have evolved for really good reasons. How do you build compromise? How do you take from each world? How do those things work in practice? Because I know that, I've got CIOs of hospitals who are like, I don't know how I talk to these people. This is a big challenge. People don't know where things are. And, I talk to CIOs in other industries and they're flummoxed. They don't know how to do this.
Well, I would say that one needs to start with maybe the Internet of Things, right? The IoT products and services, because we have to be talking to someone in our company. It would be the head of the plant or the distribution center in a hospital. It would probably be the facilities group. And so they are getting very excited about these Internet of Things because it's allowing them to better manage their assets. They can get real-time visibility and insight into the connected assets. They can look at energy efficiency more readily. As they get excited about implementing these new capabilities, there's then the conversation that has to happen about safety around this, because in many cases, again, the information is being stored on a cloud. So there is an internet connection. And even though you'd want that secure and maybe the data encrypted on the way up and down, you're still vulnerable to, let's say, a cybersecurity attack. So you have to talk to each other in terms that you understand. So it's not talking in cyber buzz language, and it's talking about what are the risks, what are the mitigations to those risks, how do we work together, and again, listening to each other, because I feel what happens is that sometimes we put the wrong people in front of each other. We take the technical, let's say, IoT person or the heavy technical cyber person, and we're putting them in front of maybe an individual who knows how to run their plant or hospital, but is not as familiar with, well, what is a cloud? What do you mean my information is being stored somewhere else? So I really think it's about listening to each other and making sure that you're using the most basic terms and layman's terms, because this is still very new to a lot of people. And I think the worst thing we do is just nod our head at each other and, think, okay, that I don't know what that person's saying, but I believe them and I just move forward with my job, instead of really taking the time to say, I don't understand what that means. I don't understand the risk. How does this work? And really be able to talk to people at their level and using language that's easily understood.
I like it. I think that's always a good idea. So you actually are doing something with this at Schneider Electric. You guys not only have launched a product called EcoStruxure, which is to organize building management infrastructure, but you guys are implementing this in your own facilities. So can you tell us a little bit about EcoStruxure and what you're doing with that?
So EcoStruxure fits nicely into what we call our smart factory program. So we use our EcoStruxure IoT technologies in our manufacturing plants, facilities, and even many of our offices as we would offer it to our customers. So it's everything from building energy management to Internet of Things enabled digital tools for factory operators. And then we actually showcase these to our customers. And we've done this in France, India, and China. We implemented a couple of our products under the EcoStruxure umbrella. One was Augmented Operator Advisor, and that enables our operators to use augmented reality to speed up an operation and maintenance. And we've been delivering between 2 and 7% gain in productivity. We also have implemented our EcoStruxure Resource Advisor, which delivers up to 30% energy savings and contributes to continuous improvement throughout the years. So those are just two examples of us showcasing to our customers EcoStruxure IoT products that we are using ourselves and sharing, obviously, the productivity gains and or the energy savings. And we plan to implement these products and services in our industrial footprint, which today includes over 200 factories in over 44 countries that we are represented in.
As part of this implementation, how involved do you get And what is your role as the CIO in trying to roll this EcoStruxure platform out to more and more plants or buildings?
The first thing we need to do is make sure that the connectivity is available in the plant or the distribution center. So traditionally, those plants have not been opened up to the internet. So we have to make sure, one, that they have the right level of connectivity and bandwidth. Two, this is all wireless connected. So we have to make sure there's enough access points within the facilities to ensure that the Internet of Things devices can actually communicate. And if I'm talking to CIOs out there, I would say this is probably the biggest learning is, one, having enough bandwidth, and two, making sure that there are enough access points, because access points get congested very, very quickly, even within being 20 to 25 feet apart. So that's a big learning. After we make sure that we have all the connectivity in place, then it's really ensuring that we can protect the assets that are in that facility from a cyber perspective. So it's putting in different types of software. One to name is Clarity, which allows us to discover assets in the plant or the distribution center and alert us if something new is identified. We put in all of our best practices around access control to certain pieces of equipment. And then, of course, we're layering different authentication layers as to who can maintain these systems and maybe upgrade them. So aside from ensuring that all of these pieces of equipment can actually communicate to each other, then we move into ensuring that there's proper security around the environment.
Got it. Real fast on the security front, because I think this is something that's really important to drive into, which is on the IT side, I see a lot of people emphasizing two different types of security. One is network-based security, so monitoring device traffic on your network, for example, and saying, hey, this is behaving weird. And then two are things like Microsoft Azure Sphere is one. It's this device-based security that also does a handshake to the cloud. It's usually key-based. So Microsoft has something, ARM PSA is a way to implement this as well. Those two things seem very complementary, but I'm curious if that's enough for the OT world, which historically hasn't been as security focused because it hasn't been on the internet. Or are you seeing other types of security related to, I guess, the physical infrastructure?
Yeah, so we're seeing very targeted companies focused on securing OT. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we're discovering all of the assets that are within the plant or the distribution center. And so we are using software from a company called Clarity. And so that's helping us to identify things that maybe we didn't know were on the network. But then we also have to figure out, once we identify something that is new, what do we do with it? Do we containerize it? Is it actually a threat? Is it just a new piece of equipment that came onto the scene that we might not have known about? So those types of technologies are somewhat new. And I would say that at this point, the best approach is multi-layered, which is what I believe we're doing from the network perspective. So securing and segmenting, let's say, the factories, the distribution centers, the hospitals, and then having a discovery layer on top of that, then having policies that can help us determine if we identify a new asset, should it be there? And then we're also beginning to test software on behavioral analytics. So there's a lot of data that can be captured, and we can look for behavior patterns. But I think we're going to continue to see the advancement of multi-layered security in OT, very similar to what we'd already have been building for decades in the traditional IT sense.
Excellent. All right. Well, Elizabeth, this has been really helpful. I feel smarter about the OT-IT convergence. I feel less terrified about cyber-physical security, and I appreciate you coming on the show this week.
Well, thank you so much.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.